June 1944. A French railway worker finishes his lunch, steps behind a signal box and crushes a small brass tube with his boot heel. A faint metallic snap inside the copper sleeve, then nothing. He slips the tube into a lump of putty-shaped explosive, presses the package against a rail joint, and walks home. 3 hours later, he is eating dinner with his family when the night express to Normandy derails 6 miles away. German investigators find nothing but twisted metal and scattered brass fragments the size of a pencil. This was not an isolated incident. On the night before D-Day, SOE post-war reports documented hundreds of railway cuts across France, with commonly cited figures putting the number at 577 that night alone. Resistance fighters destroyed hundreds of locomotives. They held up an elite SS Panzer division for roughly 2 weeks. The weapon that made all of this possible looked like something you might find in a schoolchild's pencil case. The British called it the time pencil. The Germans called it a nightmare they could never solve. The problem facing British intelligence in 1940 was straightforward but seemingly impossible. France had fallen. Across occupied Europe, millions of potential resistance fighters had the will to strike back but lacked the means. Conventional explosives required either suicidal proximity to the blast or complex timing mechanisms far beyond amateur capability. Clockwork timers were expensive, fragile, and their ticking could betray an agent during a German checkpoint search. Electrical systems needed batteries that might fail after months hidden in a barn. The resistance needed something simpler, something silent, something anyone could use. The solution came from Station 12, a requisitioned country estate called Aston House near Stevenage in Hertfordshire. This became the SOE's secret weapons laboratory, where scientists and engineers developed the tools that would, in Churchill's famous phrase, set Europe ablaze. The time pencil's inventor was Lieutenant Commander A.J.G. Langley, first commandant of Station 12. According to the British Royal Commission on Awards to Inventors, which officially credited Langley after the war, the design achieved something remarkable. It created a reliable delay mechanism using nothing but chemistry and physics. The device measured exactly 5 inches long and 5/16 of an inch in diameter, deliberately matching the proportions of an ordinary writing pencil. The body was a simple brass tube weighing roughly 1.5 ounces, though late war lightweight versions came in at barely over half an ounce. Inside this unassuming cylinder sat 3 components: a thin copper sleeve containing a glass ampule filled with cupric chloride solution, a spring-loaded steel striker held under tension by a thin metal wire, and a percussion cap fitted at the base. The activation sequence required no batteries, no clockwork, no electrical components whatsoever. An agent simply crushed the copper section using pliers or the heel of a boot. This shattered the glass ampule inside, releasing the corrosive liquid. The cupric chloride then began silently eating away at the restraining wire. When the wire finally parted, minutes or hours later, depending on the variant, the compressed spring drove the striker into the percussion cap. The cap ignited. The detonator fired. The main charge exploded. The entire countdown was completely silent. No fizzing, no ticking, no telltale odour, just invisible chemistry doing its work while the saboteur vanished into the countryside. SOE developed a colour-coded system using removable safety strips to indicate delay times. Black strips meant 10 minutes, used only for training. Red meant 30 minutes. White gave 2 hours. Green provided 5.5 hours. Yellow offered 12 hours. Blue meant a full 24-hour delay. The timing was controlled primarily by the concentration and composition of the corrosive agent in each ampule. Agents memorized the color codes and destroyed the safety strips after activation to deny intelligence to German investigators. The system had one critical vulnerability that nearly changed history. Chemical reactions slow in cold temperatures and accelerate in heat. SOE technical manuals provided correction tables showing alarming variations. A red delay, nominally 30 minutes at 15 degrees Celsius, would stretch to 75 minutes at -20 degrees, but shrink to barely 9 minutes at 43 degrees. Agents operating in winter or summer had to adjust their calculations accordingly, and sometimes they got it wrong. The time pencil's first major success came on the night of June 7th, 1941. 3 French agents targeted the transformer station at Pessac near Bordeaux, which supplied power to German submarine bases and war factories. Agents Raymond Cabard, André Varnier, and Joël Letac placed magnetic incendiary devices with time pencil delays on 8 transformers. The entire operation took less than 30 minutes. 6 of 8 transformers were destroyed. The The Italian submarine base at Bordeaux lost power for weeks. Electric railways were forced to switch to steam locomotives. Repairs took over a year. Hugh Dalton, Minister of Economic Warfare, wrote triumphantly to Churchill that industrial targets were more effectively attacked by SOE methods than by air bombardment. Now, if you're finding this interesting, consider subscribing. We are building something here for people who actually care about the details. It takes a second, costs nothing, and helps the channel grow. Now let us see how Sabotage proves superior to bombing. When RAF bombing of the Peugeot factory at Sochaux in July 1943 killed 125 French civilians without significantly damaging the facility, SOE agent Captain Harry Reich proposed an alternative. He contacted factory owner Rodolphe Peugeot directly, offering a stark choice. Cooperate with targeted sabotage using time pencils and plastic explosive, or face more RAF bombing. Peugeot provided factory blueprints and internal contacts. In November 1943, agents and workers placed explosives on compressors and transformers with delayed fuses. The factory, which manufactured tank parts, was put out of action. No civilians died. The RAF agreed to halt bombing of cooperating factories, but the time pencil's greatest hour came on the eve of D-Day. When the BBC broadcast 210 coded action messages on June 5, 1944, SOE networks and the French Resistance executed Plan Vert, a coordinated assault on the entire French railway system designed to isolate Normandy from German reinforcements. The results were devastating. Within 24 hours, SOE and resistance networks reported hundreds of cuts, with official post-war tallies commonly citing 577 that night. 52 locomotives were destroyed in southeastern France alone on June 6th. By June 7th, Normandy was effectively isolated. Long-distance rail traffic faced repeated interruptions throughout June to September 1944, paralysing German logistics across France. Pearl Witherington, the only woman to command an SOE network in France, led her restless circuit of between 2,000 and 3,500 Maquis fighters in causing over 800 railway interruptions between Paris and Bordeaux. The Germans placed a 1 million franc bounty on her head. Her forces inflicted approximately 1,000 German casualties over 4 months, and ultimately accepted the surrender of 18,000 German troops. When offered a civil MBE after the war, Witherington declined, stating there was nothing remotely civil about what she did. The most dramatic proof of the time pencil's strategic impact came from the 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich. This elite formation of 15,000 men with over 200 tanks was stationed near Toulouse when the invasion began. The journey to Normandy covered roughly 750 kilometres. By rail, it should have taken 3 days. SOE agent Major Tony Brooks, the youngest agent sent to France at just 20 years old, had prepared for this moment. His Pimento network systematically sabotaged railway flat cars needed to transport tanks by pouring abrasive lubricant into axle boxes. The wheels froze after just a few miles. Das Reich was forced to travel by road instead, where resistance fighters armed with time pencils and explosives made their journey a running battle of ambushes, destroyed bridges and cut fuel lines. The division that should have reached Normandy by June 9th did not arrive until late June. By many reckonings, the delay stretched to roughly 17 days. By then, the Allied bridgehead was firmly established. A panzer division blunted because a brass tube the size of a pencil let farmers and factory workers fight a war. The Germans captured numerous time pencils from SOE agents throughout the war, yet never adopted an identical chemical delay fuse for mass distribution. German ordnance focused on precision clockwork and electrical timing mechanisms for aerial bombs, apparently dismissing the crude simplicity of a device activated by crushing it underfoot. What German planners failed to appreciate was that simplicity was precisely the point. Devices requiring only a boot heel could be used by anyone with minimal training. The time pencil democratized destruction in a way German engineering philosophy could not comprehend. Captured time pencils did find one notorious use. On March 13, 1943, German conspirators attempted to assassinate Hitler using British fuses obtained through Abwehr channels. Major General Henning von Treschow smuggled a bomb disguised as bottles of liqueur aboard Hitler's aircraft leaving Smolensk. Lieutenant Fabian von Schlabrendorf crushed the 30-minute fuse and handed the package to Hitler's aide. The plane landed safely in Berlin hours later. The bomb never detonated. Investigation revealed the acid had corroded through the wire exactly as designed, but the percussion cap failed to fire in the unheated cargo hold's extreme cold. The same explosives and remaining time pencils were used in the July 20th, 1944 briefcase bomb. That time, the fuse worked perfectly. Hitler survived only because the briefcase was moved behind a heavy oak table leg moments before detonation. Production figures tell their own story of confidence in the design. The first batch of 3,700 time pencils was delivered in September 1939, operational before the war was a month old. By August 1940, over 67,000 had been supplied to auxiliary units, Britain's secret stay-behind resistance force preparing for potential German invasion. Wartime production ran into the millions. Estimates vary, with some wartime and post-war accounts suggesting figures as high as 12 million units, showing just how widely the device was distributed across occupied Europe. Millions of silent countdowns, each one capable of derailing a train, destroying a factory or killing an enemy. The pencil that paralysed occupied France earned its place in history, not through sophistication, but through elegant simplicity. Commander Langley's creation at Station 12 achieved what massive bombing campaigns could not: precision destruction of military assets, with minimal civilian casualties, executed by ordinary citizens who could vanish into the population afterward. A railway worker could crush the copper tube during his lunch break, insert it into explosive packed around a rail joint, and be home with his family when the night express derailed. Miles away, German investigators found no perpetrators, no witnesses, no evidence beyond scattered brass tubing. Paranoia spread through occupation forces. The shadow war became unwinnable because the enemy was everyone and no one. 5 inches of brass, a glass vial of acid, a spring-loaded striker. This was the weapon that paralysed the French railway network. This was the weapon that nearly killed Adolf Hitler twice. The Germans had Panzer tanks and Stuka dive bombers and V-2 rockets. The British had a pencil. The pencil won.